Hey folks, today on Isolation Nation, one word we focus on, and this word is incredibly powerful. It has the ability to disarm us. It has the ability to quiet us. It has the ability to put fear in us, and that one word is suicide. Now, I've been talking about mental health for a decade, so I've heard many tragic stories about suicide. They're all tragic. But I've only really been touched by it twice. The first time was with my buddy Luke Sklar. He died 2 years ago. Now, Luke and I never knew each other until he was extremely sick. And we corresponded for a year and a half every single day via text, sometimes by phone, a couple of times face to face, but almost always by text. And he sent me a message once, about 6 months before he died, that I have related to more than any other message I've ever read. And it went like this: either the sickness or the meds have made me slower, less sharp, and more forgetful. When I try to force returning to my old self, the rumination sets in. I've spent 60 years defining myself for my brain, and I'm finding it very difficult, but I have to accept this current state. And he wrote clear, and I thought, oh my God, clear. That is like I was reading something that I had wrote on my own, and I related to that so much. And when he died 2 years ago, I related to thinking, if I hadn't found treatment for my illness, would I be in the same place that Luke Sklar is? And then there was August the 31st, 2011. It was 5:43 p.m. I was sitting on this exact same couch. And I got a text from a friend, and it said, is it true about your friend Wade Belak? And I messaged back and said, I don't know what you mean. And he said, well, I heard that Wade took his own life. And I said, no way. So I called Wade, and I was very confident when the phone was ringing that he was going to pick up and go, buddy. But 2 rings, 3 rings, 4 rings, there was nobody. I didn't leave a message because, to be honest, I didn't know what to say, but my heart was sinking for sure. So I texted him, and I texted him on BlackBerry Messenger, and it was one line: are you okay? And the way BlackBerry Messenger works is when it's delivered, it is a D that appears. And when it's received, meaning someone saw it, there's an R. Well, there was never an R, just a D. And that D remains in my mind for the rest of my life. It will, because it was the realization after 5 minutes, because he would have texted me back, that Wade was gone. Today on this show, we talk about suicide, and we speak to 2 men who knew Wade, who liked Wade, who fought Wade. And today, we ask the question, did they understand Wade? That was 2011. And, it like in my family, because Wade, I can't make it out that he was my best friend, but he was a dear friend, and he spent a lot of time in my house with his family. And I still remember calling my wife, who was in New York, with our daughter who was in school, and I was just about to fly there. And it was like I said to her, I said, I got to tell you something that you're not going to believe, but believe me, it's true. Let's find out what you guys think about the question that I posed, which was, how well did you understand him? How well did you understand Wade Belak? Cam Janssen, why don't you go first? When he died, what did you think?
I remember I was at actually this house here. I had a bunch of people over. We were playing NHL, an NHL game, whatever year that was. Rick Rippon, Derek Bugard, and Wade. And we're all, the calls that you get and the people that are calling you, like, oh my God. And then you kind of just sit back, and we sat there and it's like thinking to each other. I just fought him the other day. Like, I think it was like a month before that. And the battles that you have, like, it's not, when you fight somebody, honestly though, I'll explain this, and Georgie, you know what I'm talking about this. Like, it's kind of intimate in a way, in a weird way. And that might sound bizarre, but it is. Like, Belak's a lot bigger than me, and I felt strong going against him, and he hit me, and you feel that, and then afterwards you wink at each other and you smile. So there's a lot more to it than just a fight. And I remember exactly where I was. That whole summer was very, very unfortunate for everybody. And pardon my dog who's barking. I guess somebody's walking down the street right now. But that whole summer was very, very tough for everybody.
George, how are you, George?
I'm good. And, like Cam is saying, man, that summer, all those guys were passing away, and it was terrible because fighting is a brotherhood. We understand the job, and we do the toughest job in professional sport, and we all respect each other. And when Wade passed away, I was very, very, very surprised because, he's a guy that was tough. I never saw the guy get knocked out. And often, some guys with the style that they have, they get more blows to the head than not. And he was smart, and he had a really good job too. So it seems that with the job that he had, his head was sane. But with CTE, again, that's something that we can't calculate. We don't know. And it's because of Wade, what happened to him, that I went and got tested for CTE because I started worrying about my health, because I was like, is it going to happen to me? I fought for all those years. So thinking that Wade was a guy that I never thought it was going to happen, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go get checked, because I wanted to make sure that I was going to be okay, because, man, you never know. You could think something, and then the next day somebody passes away, and then you're like, you never saw that. Nobody saw that coming.
I think it was a wake-up call, though, Michael, for everybody in the NHL. I think it was a complete wake-up call. And I'm not just getting phone calls from different tough guys that played throughout the league. It was from everybody, from fans and everybody. It was tough. And I think a lot of people came together and like, okay, we need to talk about this. Like we do. I think the outside world looks at us and any athlete per se, and they're on a pedestal, and we are, though. We are. But there's a little bit more to it. And I don't want to say feel sorry for us or anything like that, but there's still more to it, especially in a contact sport. And maybe it doesn't happen anymore in the NHL as far as hitting each other consistently, George, every night, thinking about it. Like, okay, I'm thinking about it every night. Now what do I have to do? No, I'm going to start drinking, or I'm going to start taking these painkillers. That's going to make this process a little easier, so I can go out there and deal with a guy like you, which isn't easy to deal with, by the way, as you know. So there's more to it, and you have to bring that up. And I think with all this that happened, especially in that summer, it did acknowledge the process that there is things that go on that's more than the untrained eye can see. If that makes sense.
And you know what, Cam, you're so right, because fighting, when we say the toughest job in professional sport, people don't understand it. It's not easy. It's hard. You could actually die, and sometimes it crosses your mind. And like Cam is saying, a lot of guys took pills, they took drugs, they took alcohol to numb the anxiety. And over the years, over the course of a career, taking all that stuff, it takes a toll on you physically. And that's why we all know that a lot of guys were suffering in silence, but we're supposed to be invincible. We're not supposed to show weakness. If we show that we're scared, a teammate's going to be scared. So we're actors, actually. We're actors, and we're showing the entire world how tough we are. But actually, me too, I was scared. I was scared because I didn't know what's going to happen, and I didn't know like how things was going to come out. And over the years, over the course of a career, man, things happen. And then some guys, when they have that anxiety, they take stuff, and then they just catch up to you. So that's why, in a way, I understand how tough the job was, but it's no coincidence why, if you look at all the guys that passed away that we lost, most of them were tough guys. No coincidence.
Right. So let's look at Wade's passing as you would anybody else who didn't necessarily do the same job as you did, because suicide, in many age groups, I mean, you guys are just outside of the age group where suicide is the first or second leading cause of death. So it's not always from taking punches, and we don't know whether that's what happened with Wade, but just, the idea of taking your own life. What was your reaction, Cam, when you first heard that, not so much as a fighter, but as a contemporary, a guy who was, around the same age as you?
There's more to the story then. there's more. There was a deeper demon that got him. That's what. Like I feel it, and I went through that, and I don't know exactly what he went through, if he had addiction, or even if it wasn't as hardcore as an addiction that I went through as far as painkillers and different things like that, just to kind of numb the anxiety. I got addicted to it because I got injured at a young age. I had my own place. I had money coming in, and I'm bored, and I'm like, okay, I'll eat these things and play video games. And all of a sudden you're taking a ton of them. And you're like, okay, I can't get off of them. Now that's all I'm thinking about. Now it controls my life. So like, there's so much more that goes on that maybe people don't understand. So when I saw that, I'm like, God, he was the coolest guy, like big, handsome, God damn. And he had money, he had this, he had everything. What else happened then? You can't, like, what? Tell me there's something else that went happened, something in his head that clicked that didn't make sense. And I want to know about it, because maybe it's going to affect me. I've been through weird shit, and I don't know. It kind of worried me a little bit.
Yeah, and it should. It's like if somebody who's a contemporary of yours dies of cancer, what's the first thing you do? You go to, you start to think, oh, is that me, right? And then you start to imagine, oh my gosh, I got this, this swollen gland in my neck. So, yeah, I think we all totally relate to that. And I have an answer for your question, because I knew Wade, and I knew things that were going on in his life. George, go ahead.
Yeah, well, for me, I was in shock. I was in shock. I didn't believe it. I thought that it was blown out of proportion. There's no way he committed suicide. We're a losing guy, but not by suicide. There's no way. Like I was like, until it took me a long time to actually believe what actually happened, and actually, it was the case. But like Camus said, I was like, there must have been something else that we don't know. There's something that happened that we don't know, because I just couldn't put my mind into the fact they actually did that without any good reason. So, and we'll never know. We'll never know. I even went to the point that I was like, did he have something to hide? Was he really depressing? Like, he was one of the toughest guys in the NHL. How, to my mind, I was like, how could he do this job and kill himself after? Because he's faced battle, to me, that were the biggest battle you could have. So I can't really judge what they've been through, because I don't know. But like Cam said, there's something much bigger than what happened, and we'll never know.
Yeah, but let me see if I can shed a little light onto this, because Wade and I did talk about depression, and I knew that he had suffered from depression, and I knew that he was on medication, and I knew that he had this big increase in medication just about 2 weeks before he died. And drugs like antidepressants are really powerful, and they all have labels that they can cause suicidal thoughts, especially when you start them. But his was this big increase. And I said to him at the table I'm sitting at right now, I said, dude, you're doing well. Why would somebody increase your dosage? And he said, I don't know. He just told me that, I'm a big guy and probably I should be taking more. And it was like, okay, but like the goal is to take less, not more. So there was factors in there. But here's the thing about suicide that I can tell you from the standpoint of the illness, that when people take their lives, very often people try to figure an explanation for it. Try to figure out, well, like what was going on in his life? Why would a guy, who's that tough and that strong and that successful and that handsome and that personable, with a great family and all of that? And the answer is the illness of depression. The illness of depression is by far the number one cause of suicide. And depression puts thoughts in your head that you can't talk yourself out of. And because I've heard those thoughts, right? I mean, for me, it was in 2008. And it's kind of the running joke around my house, because I tell this story all the time. But I was in a hotel room in Montreal, Marriott Hotel, room 521, 4 a.m. in the morning. And it was the 24th of November. And I was on the edge of my bed thinking, wow, I know why people take their own lives. And it has nothing to do with, do you love your family? Do you love your job? I mean, I had everything that you would think would make a guy happy. So Cam, when you asked the question, like what was going on, I'm telling you, and I don't know specifically. But
were you sober? Were you, so in that particular situation, Michael, were you sober? Were you Were you doing weird things? Like,
Nope.
explain that though. Like,
Yeah.
you're working your ass off, you're making money, you're doing everything right, and you still had that. You still had that in the peak of your performance.
I have never, I've never been drunk in my life. I've never had more than I haven't had a drink in 6 years, I guess, only because I felt that every time I would have a beer, I would eventually start to feel worse. And the next day I would struggle. But I was, totally sober. But see, this is what people don't understand. And you need to listen because I can tell you that thoughts are put into our heads that we can't control. The negative thoughts, like think about this. Parents like Wade take their own lives, and this is not like Wade because I don't know what he was thinking, but they're convinced that their kids will be better off without them. Now, what kid in the history of the planet would you think, it was probably pretty good that his dad hung himself? That would never happen, ever, ever. But that's how powerful the illness is.
And you know what? I know that actually kind of firsthand. And I probably shouldn't say this too much, but my parents had to deal with that in the instance, and it wasn't easy. And you just don't know. Like the kids, like but that's why we're doing this though, right? That's why we're talking, right, George? Like, and now we're talking like let's bring this to the table. Just like and other things that we're talking about too, as well, that's going on too. But yeah, it's very bizarre, and that's why I asked that question. Like set that up. Like you're doing everything supposed to be perfect for you, Michael. Everything I'm watching you. You're interviewing Tito Ortiz in his prime, doing with all that stuff, and now you're in Montreal, and you're like, I don't like myself. Like it's tough. It's crazy, but it's there and it's real. And people need to know. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's and thank you for sharing. Go ahead.
Crazy, Mike. What's crazy about this, Michael, is that you're the only one, and
George, we're having trouble hearing you. I'm just going to ask Phil. Sorry, George.
Depression that could actually.
Sorry, George, we're having trouble hearing you, and I
don't want to miss
any of this.
I know.
Phil, is there a suggestion that you would have for George that maybe we could hear him better? It's your internet connection, George. Is there anybody right now playing video games in your house, watching pornography? Is any of that going on? Because if so,
Georgie's got it in his phone right now. He's doing both.
Yes, I told you, George. Don't play. You got to pick one: video or pornography. You can't do both. Okay, let's try again because I want to hear what you're saying.
I know. Please.
Is it better now? Is it better now? Can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
No. You can hear me. It's not good.
Are you connected to Wi-Fi or are you connected to your network?
I hear you perfectly, though. I don't understand.
So what are you calling me a liar, George? Is that what you're saying? I'm making the whole story up. And somehow I'm a racist host of this show, and I've decided we don't want to hear any more from the black guy.
George, no. He does this to me every Tuesday. Trust me.
Didn't say that.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, give it another shot, George.
You can hear me?
I can hear him.
Okay, could you hear me now?
I can.
Can you hear me,
Let's just give it a shot. Keep talking, George. Tell me what you're going to say.
I think we can hear you.
Okay. So, Mike, what I was going to say is that people that are suffering from depression that are taking medication are the only one that could explain to us what it feels like, how they're feeling, because we try to get around it and to get it, but it's so hard because we've never had that feeling. To us, is like, it's so strange. How could you feel this way? So it's interesting to hear from you, because you're the only one that could put light into what Be-Like we're thinking about. Because what you said about the medication, how they increase it, we didn't know about it. And I don't know what it feels like. So that's why it's so interesting to hear about it. But there's one thing for sure, Michael, is that with everything that you're saying, if there was ever a part of my life where I would have to go through medication, I would never take medication from depression after hearing what you said about it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, there's a number of sides to that story. Hold on one sec. We're gonna play a video. This is just accumulation of people that have been on this show. I think this is show number 48 for us. So a handful of people that talked about their own experience with, if not attempting suicide, thinking about suicide. Roll it, Phil. Watch this. You'll recognize them.
I don't know if I wanted to die, but I didn't want to live.
It led to very, very severe depression.
And I felt like if I was gone, it would be so much better.
If hockey wasn't there, I don't think I'd still be here today.
I had anxiety. I had ADHD.
I definitely, I contemplated it. I thought, what would it be like, without me on this earth right now?
Not attempted suicide, but many thoughts of suicide constantly. Even in the late 1990s, when I lived in Toronto, I still had that thought. When the subway would come up, the TTC, every time the subway came, I thought of what it would be like to jump in front of that train. Not that I felt like doing it, but my brain constantly looked for avenues of ways that I could get out.
You have these thoughts and, but then I always was able to like kind of talk myself through it.
As a 20-year-old who has gone through addiction, suicide, there's a lot of time for me to sit and think about a lot of things.
I was hospitalized in college. I tried to commit suicide myself, and I was just trying to end myself.
That was James Wilder, who played for the Argos for 3 years. He's going to play for the Alouettes this year, assuming there's a CFL season. George, I'll introduce you to him. This conversation took a turn with him where I asked him before the show. This was 3 days ago. I asked him before the show, hey, do you have any background with mental illness? And he said, I had ADHD. And that's it. And then all of a sudden, he throws it out there that he took an overdose of pills attempting to kill himself when he was at Florida State because he had been suspended from the team and he didn't want to live without football. But it was so bizarre, to hear him say that. It just came as a total shock. Cam.
Well, as I say, like the ups and downs, like think about it, George, like you get into a college, right? And your whole family's like, oh, wow, everybody's pumping you up. And all of a sudden something bad happens there. And you're like, oh, my God. And now you have, for the first time in your life, negative attention on you. Negative attention. I've been through it. I had to crawl out of a couple holes. And it's horrible. And maybe you deserve it. Maybe you don't. But on the other hand, like you don't know how to deal with it. And then people look at that like, oh, that wasn't that big of a deal. But they don't know what you're going through. And you can't take it because it's the first time you've ever had all that emotion built up in one place at one time and all that stress. And we've had that, we have. And so like it takes a toll on people.
You know what's crazy about all this is that we could identify it a bit, like identify the problem, but we don't know how to solve it. It's so hard. It is impossible. It seems like there's no pill, there's no perfect solution to it because everybody deals with this so differently. It's so hard to say. And most of the time, they don't like to admit they're suffering from depression.
Yeah.
They feel that if they admit that, they feel weak. They don't want to show this to the world. They were professional athletes. They don't want to show that. There's something that is too personal. So you don't want to share that, and you don't want to show that you need help. Because athletes, even when we're done, we still think we're invincible. We never needed help. So that could be maybe part of the reason why we're losing athletes because of depressions.
Hey, that's George, why we lose people. Sorry, Ken. That's why we lose people in general. And while you two guys associate with the struggles of athletes, but I can tell you on a different scale, the struggles of a lawyer, for instance, can be very similar. That you hear the same thing, disappointing others. You hear the idea if you want to make partner at a law firm, your fear is to say, okay, well, I need to go to see a psychiatrist because right now I'm having trouble getting out of bed, because then you're worried that other people will look at you differently. And they probably will because of the stigma that still surrounds mental illness. So, I don't think it's exclusive to you guys, but this is the only world that you've lived in, and these are your personal experiences. So it makes sense that you would relate it to that. Let me just ask George a question. Have you, over the course of your life, been affected by suicide? And I mean, have you cared about someone who's attempted suicide or lost someone to suicide, or yourself? Have you ever thought of it?
I have thought about it, and when I was a kid, when I was playing minor hockey, because when I was playing minor hockey, I was getting called the N-word all the time. And the way my dad raised me, he beat me up a lot. So at home, I was getting beat up, and outside of home, I was getting called a nigger. So I had no way of no refuge, no way that I could come down for anything. And that's how I grew. And it was tough love. It was tough. So that's what grew my character today. But there's many times where I would get, you get called the N-word, you go back home, your parents don't want you to play hockey, they don't support you. You go home and your dad beats you after that for maybe I didn't have 90s grade because I need to have 90s grade when I was a kid, and if I didn't have that, I was getting beat. So a combination of stuff made it so my childhood was tough. It was tough. I did thought about it a couple times, but my dream of playing the NHL was so big. That was my only way to prove people wrong of call me the N-word, that I couldn't quit. And when I read Jackie Robinson's autobiography, it helped me to pursue my dreams. But Mike, if I didn't read that book and I didn't have that dream to play in the NHL, who knows what I would have done when I was a kid.
People on television, in professional sports, Cam, I'm just going by what George is saying. There's the assumption that, you couldn't possibly have the same problems that the rest of the world has. People looking, they couldn't possibly think, that you had a lot of tough love in your house, or that it's just like there's this perception, but that perception goes on. You go outside your house, right? And you look and you think your neighbors have the perfect marriage, right? You think that on social media, nobody talks about the bad stuff. They only talk about the good stuff.
Michael, it's a lie.
It is a lie.
It's a lie. All of it. Facebook. Can I just say one thing? And maybe this night, everything the nasty shit that happened to me, I brought on my fucking self. And I told you this, Michael, before. I got addicted to things. I got put in a spotlight, and I did it. I didn't come from much, but I worked my ass off and I did my shit. My parents were from House Springs, Missouri. And if an agent came up to them, they're looking at them like, oh, okay. Like they spraying tar, doing their shit. It was hardcore. But I will say this, of all the shit that I had to crawl out of, like the little things that I brought on myself, if you get a routine and you find something where I'm going to write something down, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go for a jog, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get my wife up, we're going to do sit-ups, even if it's 20 at a time, even if it's something that you two could do together to build your endorphins. If I work out, my endorphins build up, meaning I feel happy. Like it actually builds your happiness back up. I was taking so many goddamn painkillers, pardon my language, to where I was so down on myself. Everything was happy for me. Everything was happy. Like everybody, I got so much attention, but I was eating so many of these goddamn things. I couldn't realize the happiness anymore. My fault. I get it. But crawling out of that, I had to work out and just build my endorphins up and just build stuff on my own and talk to people and do this and create different things and just find something that I wanted to do and I liked. And it was hockey, of course. And it was a hard thing to get out of. But if I have to get any advice to anybody, you have to get a routine and build your endorphins up through working out, George, or something that you're passionate about and you have a vision on. I know it sounds weird, but that's how I crawled out of it.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, honestly.
It doesn't. It makes sense. It makes sense. It doesn't weird at all. And you're right. I agree with you and stuff. You got to find meaning and find ways to get out of your hump, change something. And you're right, that routine sometimes, that's what you need. When people don't have routine, sometimes they go crazy. They know what to do. That's why sometimes you do crazy stuff. So it's actually a really good point that you brought up.
There's, do you see what, I'm not 100% sure what shirt I'm wearing. What does it say?
It's a women's medium, by the way. I noticed that.
What?
I believe.
If you think you're insulting me with the woman's medium, oh my God, that's the dream. It says,
and your hair looks good.
Yeah. It says, fight for your happiness. And I want to apply that to what you just said, because when you are really sick, as I have been, and as many people who follow SickNotWeak have experienced. You're not living, right? It's like you have left your life behind, and now you're walking around, but your life is back home. So yeah, you can fake it, you can do all the things that you always did before, but you can't feel anything.
Yes.
And my message is always that there's just nothing. There's nothing in that to get out of bed, right? Because you know when you wake up in the morning, you go, oh shit, you know what? I'm not going to feel anything good today. So you go, why bother? And the idea is, to me, if you're that sick, you have to decide that I'm going to fight for my happiness. And that means endorphins. If that will help you, great. I mean, God knows I don't want to be on medication, but I am on medication. So George, I'm addressing now what you said before. And that is, medication is scary, but medication saved my life. And the idea is it has to be this. I will do anything to get better. And whether it's medication, whether it's exercise, whether it's electric convulsive therapy where they shock you, whether it's going for therapy and talking it through, it doesn't matter. You have to say, I'll do anything to get better, because there's nothing worse than being in that place.
Yeah, you're right. No, I totally agree with you. And if you think that it saved your life, see, it's one thing. In some case, it doesn't, because as you talk about weight thing, the medication increase could be one of the reasons, we don't know. And you have saved your life. And I'm pretty sure that in many cases, it has saved people's life.
Right.
But man, this disease it's not as easy as treat as anything else. It's not like you have a headache, you take a pill, the headache goes away. Depression is something that is deep, that is scary. It's demons you have in your mind. And I don't know people that have depression, when they take those pills, if the demons really goes away. That's the scary part about it.
What do you ask me?
Well, how about you when you take your pills? How about that? Like you say, it saved your life. You still have demons sometimes that you have to fight through, even though you're on medication?
I explain it this way, that when I was, maybe it was just Montreal, maybe Montreal is just a city that, anybody goes to and they feel really crappy. I don't know, George, but all I know was it was Marriott Hotel, you know it well, around the corner from the Bell Center, room 521. Yeah. And that was before, when I was not on medication. And I had been through a really, really tough year worrying about someone that I loved very much. And my anxiety was a huge issue. And then I fell into this hole. And I guess what I would say is that depression, in my case, I couldn't find anything to do except for taking medication. That was kind of like, I was so deep into this that if you said, you should start exercising more, which, I mean, I exercised a lot. You don't get into a woman's medium if you don't exercise. But I
was a joke. I had it like,
I loved it, man. Yeah.
Everybody says it to me.
Yeah. So, see, in your world, accusing someone of being slim is an insult. In my world, it's like, oh my gosh, I love you, man. Thanks for saying that. But George, onto the medication thing, that, sometimes there is no other option. And so I took it, and I went from being a 0 on a scale of 0 to 10. We call it the Sichter scale. 0 is the worst day imaginable, and 10 is when you feel perfect, which is not euphoria. It's the ability to feel euphoric if the situation calls for it, right? Otherwise, it's artificial. There's no such thing as a happy pill. There's a pill that allows you to feel happiness when the situation calls for it. So instead of being a 0, which I was for a year and a half, like every day, every morning, every experience. We went to Israel with my parents took us to Israel. So it was me and my wife and my kids and my brother and his wife and his kids. And I was like in the hole. And I was so tortured because all I could think about was, oh my God, I don't know how to get out of bed and go through this again. But my dad was so happy that we were all there. So I had to fake it. And this was all sort of leading up to November the 24th. So now when you ask me how I'm doing, I say, I'm doing okay. Now my worst day is a 4, but my best day is a 7. So I do give up something for this medication. It's not like I sit here saying, okay, well, you know what? Drugs are perfect for you. But they take away the bottom, which means that even on a bad day now, I'm okay. Not great, but I'm okay. We need to brighten this a little bit. Well, actually, it's not going to brighten it a little bit, but you know our buddy Sean Cullen, right? He did a song for each one of you guys.
Yeah.
Song.
Oh boy! Oh
yeah.
boy!
He did a song for Wade Belak today, and here it is. Take it, Sean.
It's a song for Wade Belak. Wade, I think that you were great, and I wish you could have stayed just a little bit longer. Wade, I like the way you played, defense or forward it made no difference to you. Seem to like to laugh as you punched guys in half. Wade, wish that you had stayed. I think it would have been great for just a little bit longer. Think we could have been friends just a little bit longer. Oh, Wade. Love Wade.
Good job, Phil.
You're the man, dude. You're the man.
Good job, bro.
Yeah,
and
that
he
was,
did punch me in half, by the way. He did punch me in half multiple times.
Yeah,
my parents were in town that week.
Yeah, I was at the big Belak payback game. And I'm going to walk very carefully on describing why he wanted to pay you back, because last time you pointed out that you were trying to, sort of kiss and make up with the city of Toronto, right? So I'm saying that Thomas Caberlet took a dive. He did. 3 seconds after he released the puck, he saw you coming and he took a dive like a 75-year-old man in Buffalo getting pushed by the cops in a riot. He took a dive.
Georgie, you've crushed guys before. Don't act like, so you gotta help me with this one. It was a little late. I was committed to my hit. I've talked to Caberlet before. It was horrible. The people of Toronto hated me for years. Don't act like you haven't been in that situation before, Georgie. Help me with this, please. Thank you.
No, but you know what? You did your job, though. You were pretty physical. You were good. I'm impressed with the height that you had, what you did. Because every time you're out there, you make your presence known. And you and Ty Domi, you guys were the toughest pound-for-pound guys in the NHL. You, Ty Domi, and Darren Langdon. You're in that category, Cam. Yeah, you're in that category.
He's a good guy, eh, Langer? You ever talked to Langer before? He's a good guy. Good Nova Scotia boy. Just he drank a soda, a Coke every period. Just drink a soda. Did you drink soda? Come on, that's old school shit. Soda before periods. That's crazy.
Yeah,
I love it, man. No, I didn't mean that. That was sometimes you hit a guy. You hit a guy weird.
You know what,
punch
dude?
a guy weird.
Statute of limitations is up, and I was there that night when you and Wade fought, and this was actually for him, it was the best night of his professional career, right? Because crowd was chanting "Belak, Belak," and he loved it, So in a twisted sort of way, you explained it in a way that I've never heard before. There's an intimacy between people who fight on the ice, and are not necessarily and often not fighting out of anger, but fighting because you're trying to maintain your job. You're trying to live out your dream, which is playing in the NHL. And George, did you knew what I was making reference to, right? With the 75-year-old man in Buffalo?
Oh God. Oh.
Have you?
Is he okay? Do we know if he's okay? He was bleeding out of his ears. Is he okay?
Yeah. I think he's still in the hospital.
Really?
But yeah, I mean, the whole story was crazy. And, one of the things that we were thinking that we would do would be, we would talk about, race relations. And, but, we've gone 40 minutes now by talking about something that, is equally in the shadows, right? And equally needs to be dealt with, because the worst thing that you can hear, and I'm not comparing one problem in society to another, but the worst thing that I hear all the time is about a 16-year-old who takes her own life and never told anyone that she was struggling because she didn't feel as though it was her right, with a beautiful bedroom and with, loving parents and with everything going for her. She doesn't feel like she has the right to say, hey, I have these thoughts. You know how tough that is to say to your parents, hey, I have thoughts of ending my life. And that, that just breaks my heart. And the fact that we still live in a world where people bury stuff like that, it's pretty amazing that it's 2020, and it's pretty amazing that it's 2020. And we still are talking about how cops beat up Black people. They kill Black people, and they're not even worried about being videotaped when they do it. I mean, that's, I think, like the most horrifying part is that he wasn't even worried that people were going to see, George.
Well, it's crazy because racism today is not worse. It's just, as you said, it's getting filmed. Things been going on for years and years, but people didn't see it. But now everything is on social media, everything's online, so you see everything now. And now, what's awesome about this whole thing is that before it was a Black issue, and now all nationalities are talking about it because they're all witnessing it. So the discussion comes from everywhere. The only thing, though, Mike, is I think I've heard enough discussion about it over the years. It's time for solution. Because if we don't, in 10 years, we're going to have sitting in this table again, all three of us talking about how recognizing that there's a problem again, but no solution has been made, and no action has been made. It's the same issues again.
Yeah, I think that, well, there's some of this I don't get a vote on, right? Like, it's totally wrong for a white person to say, well, I know what it's like to go through what you've gone through. I mean, you talked about your childhood. I mean, I wouldn't even use the word you use because I don't have the right to say it, because it means something different coming from you talking about your own experience than it does from me. But I will say this, that the answer to racism in the United States when it comes to Black people is not in the hands of Black people. It's in the hands of the power-brokering white people. It's in our hands to fix it because we are the cause of the problem. And if Black people could have fixed it, they would have fixed it in 1964 when Lyndon Johnson passed the Civil Rights Act. They would have fixed it when slavery was abolished. But you can't fix it when you are being held down, like literally in the case, obviously, of George Floyd, by white society.
Well, the only way they could solve this, Michael, is by the government should put a rule, zero tolerance for racism, whether you're a police officer, nurse, or anything. And if you commit one act, you're fired. Because the thing is, people that are racist, you can't change them. That's the way they are. That's the way they are as a human being, and you will never be able to change them. But what you could do, you could force them to be respectful for people that are around them. And the way you do that is government, zero tolerance for racism. Any government job, you're fired right away if you commit an act. And all the other jobs, if you're an owner, you say zero racism policy on my company. So any employee you have, one act, they're fired. So just like in hockey, you get suspended if you do something stupid. Well, now what could happen is that if somebody commit an act of racism, you can give them a fine and get them fired. And that way, you'll force everyone that is racist to respect their surrounding. I think that's the best we could do, because we could do all the march that we want. You'll never be able to change somebody on the inside that is racist, that raised their kids racist. It doesn't matter if you talk about education, they don't care. Right now, they're looking at what's going on in the world and they're getting off on it because it's like, this is going on because of people like me, and they love that. So it's actually not helping to just talking about it. And that's why we need radical solution, like I just said, to force them to be respectful.
Cam?
No, I agree with that. No, you're not born racist, by the way. You're not born racist. What kid comes out and is like, I don't know, no, your parents teach you that. And I think it is getting better. Like, I think, like, if you say something racist at work, what work's not going to fire you on the spot? Somebody says something stupid around you. Aren't you like, what? Get away from me. Or homophobic or anything. You're like, oh, maybe 20 years ago you were like, what? Now you're like, what the fuck did you just say? Get away from me. I don't know him, whatever. So in that way, I do think it's getting better. But now there's an alliance. There's an NHL alliance. All these kids, Michael, we talked about this the other day. Mm-hmm. All these black kids that are going to play in Toronto or wherever, if shit goes down, if somebody says something stupid, which is usually probably the fucking parents, the dipshit parents, if they say something, they're fucking gone. And those guys could look at Wayne Simmons and Trevor Daley and all the boys up there, all those fucking studs that played in the league a long time, made a shit ton of money, fucking doing whatever the hell they want to do. And they look at them like, hey, help me with this. And now you have some sort of conduit happy to feeling better with this whole situation. I think things are getting better. George, am I wrong on that? Or do you like how this whole alliance came about? If you're a young kid like you were, and you could see all these big boys up there, like in charge, like, what? You got some problems? Come here. We'll talk about this. Yeah, now you feel fucking safe a little bit, right? Like, damn right.
No, you're right. You're right in that point that it is getting better in that way for sure. As back then there was no resources, so in that way there is. People are, I hate like pointing like people that are negative because it's putting light to them and they don't deserve it. But it is true that when we think about it, though, as you say, there's way more resource that there was back then. So you could always say it's a step in the right direction, but we still need more to be able to make sure that, what happened after, and it's not just Floyd, Arbery happened just before that. And then every single day I'm getting image of stuff going on still every day. It's crazy. Everybody's saying me stuff because they're like, George, talk about this, talk about that, talk about this.
Oh, God.
There's things almost going on every day. And I'm like, man, if I post that stuff on my social media every day, I'm just
you can't keep up with it, George. Like, you can't keep up with it, man. You can't keep up with it. It's nonstop.
Impossible. Yeah, exactly, impossible. So you just try to live happy.
Yeah, no, you're right. But you can't. Don't try to do you can only do so much because you'll overexert yourself, and then people won't take you serious if you're throwing. But I think now let's see how this plays out with the alliance. And if it needs to be tweaked, let's tweak it. If there needs to be more guys like you, Georgie, coming involved, like you walk into that group like, no, I'll take control of this damn thing. Like we could expand this whole thing. And I just think it's an unbelievable if I'm a young kid, not that I know, but if I'm a young kid and I get people fucking chirping me, I'm going to look at it like, wait. I need to talk to somebody. And now you have an avenue. Let's see where this goes. It can only get better.
You mentioned that things are better than they were, which is impossible. I mean, I certainly can't talk about the NHL and what it's like for a person with black skin to play in the NHL. I mean, how would I know that, George? You can talk about it from when you played, but there's an issue here, which is when it comes to mental health, for instance, people will say to me every day of my life, oh, it's getting better, isn't it? And my answer almost always when you talk about the stigma is, I don't know. Like, what the hell do I know? Like you're talking about something that is unspoken. Just like racism, it's not necessarily just the guy that uses the N-word to you, George, in the corner. It's about the ones that think the N-word but don't use it because they're afraid of the consequences, but they still will oppress you. They will keep you down in a place of work. That non-visible racism, to me, is where the real problem is. And that's hard to deal with because who knows who's doing that. I want to get some advice from you guys. 2 questions from Facebook. One from Paramedic Nat. Her name's Natalie Harris. She was a paramedic in Barrie, suffered from severe PTSD, attempted to take her own life. We love her here a lot. What advice would you give to youth who feel that sharing emotions makes you look weak? And similarly, I work with athletes. What advice would you give to encourage them to talk? And this is specifically about mental health and about sharing something to find a way to relieve your pain. Cam, you first.
Look, I know it's difficult when you're young to try to go to somebody. Everybody thinks they're so cool, eh? When they're in middle school and they're in high school, my mom and dad were like losing money. And I'm like, can I have an Abercrombie & Fitch shirt? I remember everything was so I want to be cool. So for you to come out of your shell and go to somebody and say, I'm thinking weird things. Like, it's tough to do that. You're going to find the right people. There's always somebody. And you might look at the crowd at an assembly or whatever and see, oh, everybody's in their cliques. There's people in there that think just like you. There is. The stats will tell you. They're there. I was like that. I was weird. I needed to find my clique that made me feel comfortable, that I could release myself to. Find the right people. It might be difficult, but you can't do this on your own. And if you think everybody's walking around in Versace shit, it's not the case. It is not the case. Find the people that can relate to you and talk to them. Don't be scared to do that. I did it when I was young. I'm tougher than shit. Georgie probably did it when he was young, and he's a lot tougher than I am. Put it that way.
But you know, Mike, the thing with emotion, I like that you're actually asking about it, because it's a problem that I had for the longest time because of the way I was raised and how I was beat up by my dad. When you don't share your emotion, you have a ball right here in your body, and it's so heavy and it's hard and it's cancerous. It kills you and it stays with you. I've always admitted that I went to counseling to be able to ease up this problem that I had, and to actually be able to talk to my dad again, because I didn't talk to him for years because of that emotion. I shut it down. Sometimes I would tell people that I didn't have a dad. All those emotions were inside of me. I thought I was strong by doing that, but I wasn't. It was hard because I was thinking about it all the time. When you keep your emotion inside, it doesn't matter what you want to do in life. It's always harder because of weight that is so hard in there. But once I released it, when I went to counseling, I felt so light. Even though I was 250 pounds, I felt like I could fly through the clouds. It was insane. So everyone out there that are listening to us and they're talking about their emotion, it's the same thing. It is. At first, it's not that it's hard to do. It's because you weren't used to it. It's not a reflex you've had. But I guarantee you that if you let that go and you give yourself a chance, the way you're going to feel after you let it go and you talk to someone, you're going to feel so much better. You will never hold back again.
Hey, this was an education for me. Gosh, you know, like the assumption is about enforcers from your era was, you know, you guys are thugs and, you know, you guys are this and that. I mean, Cam's a thug, but not you.
We were
George.
both crazy. Yeah. I was crazy. Okay. I blame my parents. I blame my parents.
But I mean, the fact is that by far the most interesting people that I've ever met as a group are guys that did your job, you know, like by far the most interesting group of people. And I was really touched by your stories that, you know, that I think people can relate to. I mean, no one can relate to the fear of being on the ice and fighting, like unless you're, I mean, that position doesn't even exist anymore. But, you know, but people relate to your struggles, whether you're a hockey player or not, and your struggles when you're young, and your struggles, Cam, with painkillers and the idea of suicide. I mean, that's just all so relevant. And Cam, I'm happy to tell you that you have now set the Isolation Nation record for most swear words in a 30-second span. You nailed it, man.
Whoa. I thought I was, whoa. I thought I was good today. I cussed that much today. I was emotional. You get me emotional, Michael. You're lucky I don't do it on TSN.
That was awesome. And you know, the whole thing about swearing is that you want people to, no, don't say sorry. You want people to be real. You want to say, okay, tell me your real feelings. But you can't say to them, tell me it without using the language that's real for you. So you know what I'm motherfucking saying.
I know. I don't do it on terrestrial radio, and that's all that matters, right?
Hey, George, great to see you, man. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your warmth and all of those things. And it's just, you know, George, I've known George for years. George hosted Off the Record once. He's been in my house. He ordered way too much food from a vegetarian restaurant, but of course now George is a vegan, so you know we couldn't. He possibly looks like understand. One, doesn't he? Yeah, but you're two lovely guys, and a
vegan. Oh my! We're going to be doing some stuff, Michael. I gotta be calling Georgie. Like I love the guy to death. We think alike. We could chirp each other. We might be doing some stuff coming up there.
Okay, well,
I gotta call him. Oh,
This was
my
great.
God.
Don't cut me out of the
love
mix.
We
Okay,
got you, buddy.
so let's do this. Phil, you're going to roll the George song, and then you're going to roll the what's the other guy's name? Cam. That's it. Cam.
Hi. Hi.
His song, and you can cut back and forth between us because we're going to enjoy it. So this, thanks, guys. This is Sean Cullen. You heard this before, with a toast to George Laraque, and he did it Johnny Cash style. Listen.
Oh, lefty coming at you.
This is the ballad of George Laraque. If you fight with him, you're gonna get a shock. He'll pound you with his fists of steel. The fight is strong and the pain is real. From George Laraque.
Oh, love it.
Played for Edmonton and Montreal. All the big bruisers, he'd fight them all.
Ooh.
But that was not what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a friend to me and you, this George Laraque.
Oh.
He'd help everybody whatever he can.
Put the Cam song.
He helped the people of his native land.
Oh, yeah.
He helped the people of Haiti. And I thought he was great, oh George Laraque.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
There are men who skate this earth, have to fight to prove their worth. Eyes are hard, their hands are cold, but they have a heart of gold. Daddy's home.
Yeah, he is.
Daddy's home.
Yes, he is.
Daddy's home. Daddy's home.
Yeah.
Cam Janssen was his name. Fighting is his claim to fame. I was cold and his hand was fast. Now he has his own podcast. Daddy's home. Daddy's home. Daddy's home. Daddy's home.
Come here, kitty.
The nicest men you'll ever meet. If you're walking down the street, but you smile as you pass, or they may just kick your ass. Daddy's home.
Yeah, he is.
Daddy's home. Daddy's home.
So tough.
Daddy's home.
So
That's
tough.
awesome.
Don't
I
punch
know.
my face.
I told you I got kitty cats, Michael. I told you.
Yeah.